sure about a sentence. I think perhaps the single most convincing fact, observation that you could point to would be the pattern of resemblances that you see when you compare the genes using modern DNA techniques, actually looking at the letter-to-letter correspondences between genes. Compare the genes of any pair of animals you like, pair of animals, pair of plants, and then plot out the resemblances, and they fall in a perfect hierarchy, a perfect family tree. And the only alternative to it being a family tree is that the intelligent designer deliberately set out to deceive us in the most underhand and devious manner.
Popular video that's been circulating for a while now, and it is a video by Dr. Richard Dawkins, famous evolutionist, of course. And the video is titled something like one single fact that refutes creation. Okay, they call it creationism, even though it's more like evolutionism versus creation. And so the speaker asks Richard Dawkins, it's a short video, what's a single fact that refutes creation, specifically separate ancestry? And he looks to the similarities in the biological world. He asserts that what we see in the biological world, the fact that all living organisms have these similarities in anatomy, morphology, physiology, genetics. He points to the nested hierarchical nature of the biological world. You know, why do humans look more like chimpanzees than they do to orangutans or dogs or fish? And he says if these similarities are due to God's design, then God must be deceiving people into making it look like evolution, even though it's not. So I was curious, Dan, what would be, in your opinion, the best way to engage that kind of argument?
Well, I would say two things. First, when we dialogue with evolutionists and they want to pepper us about the flood or creation or young Earth or whatever, I have very limited time, so we have a spin move, and the spin move is, hey, let me ask you one question, and if you can answer this question using science from the observational method of science, from not historical science, not faith, not your religion, but historical, but real observational science, then you can ask me any question you want. And we simply ask them, if they agree to the terms, how did non-living matter become alive? And of course, the honest ones will say, well, I can't answer that. I don't know. And then we point out, well, so you have faith just like I have faith. And the honest ones will say, gosh, you're right. Didn't think about that before, because they have to have faith, because they don't have a science experiment, nor will they ever have a science experiment demonstrating in an observable, testable, repeatable way how non-living matter became alive. And then that cell somehow found a female cell, or the other way around, to go mate and create more cells. You know, it's crazy. So if you can't get the car started, you can't drive it down the street, argumentatively. So that would be one thing that I would say. The other thing, when you look at how animals and organisms are similar, I would say that also proves the Bible's historicity and the Bible's validity, because the distinction of man is the dominion mandate. So when God created everything, why else do I believe in a young earth? Well, I believe it because God said to man after he created everything, by the way, hey, Adam, look behind you. All that stuff, that's on you. All these animals. Oh, by the way, you're going to prove your dominion over them by naming everything. The legal term, when I have draft a living will or an estate for my kids, they're called my issue, because I issued them into this planet, and then I named them. And that's exactly what Adam did to all the creatures. He exercised dominion and authority over the animal kingdom, which is now fallen, by naming all of them. And then him and Eve worked in stewardship to take dominion over the earth. And when they sinned, everything that was under them fell. All of dominion fell under the curse. So when you look around and you distinguish man, humans, from all the other animal kingdom, you have to think, if that's true, what would God have done in man that would make them distinct in order to get them to fulfill the dominion mandate? Well, I can think of some things right off the bat. How about throwing? Chimps can't throw for accuracy for anything, but if you put a trained person with a sling or a spear or a bow and arrow in a cage with 40 chimps, the human's going to win because they can throw. We understand projectiles, right? So we have the means to take dominion. And then you look at things like running while you're upright. Well, humans can run upright miles a day and scan their environment, turning their head side to side. What other smart animal can do that on a bipedal way, run, scan their environment, and run 50 miles in a day? And then you have to look at the biggest part, which is our brains. So a chimp doesn't even have the Broca location in their brain, the unit, the little sugar cube size part of the brain that allows for communication and speech. We know over 1 million words in our vocabulary. Now, chimps can sign and do some other stuff, but come on, they can't communicate like we can. And the other thing, the distinction to look about humans is simply this. Look at how we design things for fun. We have artistic ability. So a hummingbird in some areas can create a little nest in an incredible area that can even maintain winds and everything. It can try it to trees and all kinds of stuff. They're really smart, and spider web and bees. All that stuff's already pre-programmed, but never do they add aesthetics to their structures that they create. Only we do that. Why? Because we're made in imago Dei, the image of God. We have a desire and a will and a capacity to design and create things and overbuild things in a way that no other animal ever does or even has the capacity to do. No chimp builds a structure and then steps back and goes, well, I think I'll paint it blue. So we have the dominion mandate. So I would say the biblical worldview is we have distinguishing characteristics about humans that are very, very clear and in alignment that we are distinct among all the other animals. We're not even in the animal kingdom. We're beings. We're spiritual beings. We bury our dead. We have musical instruments. We do artwork. We understand that there's an afterlife. None of the other animals do that. A ceremonial death or singing or artistic expression, we're so totally different than the animal kingdom.
Wow. Excellent answer. I love the way you put that. We're made in the image of God. And therefore, I like to say that should give us a sense into how God created, possibly by the way we create, the way we design things. And it actually just turns out, Dan, that we design in homologous patterns. We design in nested hierarchical patterns. Look at modes of transportation. Sedans look a lot more similar to SUVs than they do to what? Semi-tractor trailers, airplanes, and boats.
Yeah.
So there's a natural pattern there due to design, as you've said, and not common descent. And it's interesting. I'll say this, if you were to look to genetics, right, Dan? Even if you were to look to similar sequences, let's say between humans and chimpanzees, now they're finding, amazingly, that there's differences even within similar sequences in how those genes are regulated or how they're used or expressed. So even in the similar regions, we're finding differences that evolutionists really, really struggle with. And so isn't it interesting that would be Richard Dawkins' number one so-called contradiction to creation? And yet we really do have an elegant answer to it, as you've shown, Dan.
We do. Yeah, good point. Great point.